The Bible says in Romans 8:28 that all things work together for the good of those that love the Lord, that are called according to his purpose. God took my good, the bad, and the ugly, and he transformed it into a new life with new purpose. Hello, folks, and welcome to Walking in Purpose. This concept is geared towards engaging in meaningful conversations with the hopes of making a difference in this broken world. The goal is to create pathways and eliminate barriers of poverty, drugs, and community disconnect. And we do that through knowledge, plus education equals confidence, because we often fear what we do not understand, and knowledge is our best defense. Education leads to understanding, and understanding to alternative solutions. I want to welcome you here today to another episode of Walking in Purpose. The topic today is mental health. I'm going to say that again. The topic today is mental health. And I want to thank God for a brother that I met. He's going to come on in a few minutes. But our guest today is Brother Rashad Bowtie Mills. And he's going to talk to the topic of mental health. But before we move forward, I want to give a shout out to Pastor Colbert and First Lady Eva for the connection. I met the brother doing a ministry assignment, and him and I made a connection right away. We have kindred spirits. You know, the Bible said that the spirit recognizes spirit that we are sons of God. And I thank God for this connection today. It's a very interesting and important topic and very dear to me myself. Because as you know, I've been through 30 years of mental health issues, 15 years of substance use disorder, and I have been incarcerated for over 10 years. A matter of fact, 10 years, 3 months, and 25 days. And one of the things that I went through was mental health issues. And you know, for me, it was like a silent killer because I didn't want anybody to know what I was going through. I felt so ashamed. So, you know, over a period of time, I became desensitized because I was in it for so long. It seemed like it was normal to me. And then I was numbing myself through taking narcotics, drugs. And that just led me down the pathway of incarceration. But thanks be to God for him delivering me out of it. And it reminds me of a scripture that's in Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23. It says, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life. This verse highlights the central role of the heart, which encompasses emotions, thoughts, and intentions in shaping a person's life. And me giving my life over to Christ is what healed me and brought me out of that situation. So 19 years later, I'm able to stand before you and say that God is great. So before we get into the topic once again, which is mental health issues, I want to give you some background information about my brother, Mr. Rashad Bowtie Mills. Rashad Mills is an accomplished licensed clinical professional, counselor, speaker, and author. He is responsible for assisting clients and students as they navigate many of the challenges that life presents them. Rashad has worked closely with many people in various roles, including paraeducator and Baltimore City School systems and mental health professionals at the Baltimore City Juvenile Center, and speaking to thousands of people, offering motivation and inspiration. Rashad earned his Bachelors of Arts degree in Telecommunications from Morgan State University and his Masters of Science in Counseling from Johns Hopkins University. And without further ado, I want to turn the floor over to my brother, Mr. Rashad Bowtie Mills. Brother Rashad, take the floor.
Thank you so much, Brother Thomas, for having me on this wonderful podcast, Walking in Purpose. So as you stated, I am Rashad Bowtie Mills, licensed clinical professional counselor. I've been licensed here in the state of Maryland for the last 7 years to provide mental health services. And I actually arrived at the field of mental health in a very interesting way. At one point, I was a sports broadcaster, and I was able to do that for 2 years, but my own challenges with alcoholism caused that career to end. And so I was doing that in the state of Oregon, Bend, Oregon specifically. When I got back to the state of Maryland, I really had no idea in terms of what I wanted to do. So I began to do a lot of substitute work in Baltimore City public schools. And there was a young man that, and I can't mention his name, but there was a young man that reminded me of myself, a much younger version of myself. He was really sarcastic and witty, had a great sense of humor, really sharp. And we were walking to the library one day in the school, and I vividly remember this, and I asked him, and I said, well, why do you do some of the things that you do? And he looked at me with a very straight face and a clear voice, and he said, Mr. Mills, my brain tells me to do the right thing, but I always do the opposite. And that was like this light bulb aha moment. And I began to think about how can I impact younger brothers and sisters from a different perspective. Now, here's the interesting part of this. I actually applied to be a teacher, Teach for America. And as a Black man that's educated, I thought that I would be a shoo-in. I knew that I would get it instantly, but I was declined the opportunity to get into the Teach for America program. And after this young man made this statement, I said, well, maybe it's mental health. Maybe I can impact younger brothers and sisters from the different perspective of mental health, because I've always been fascinated with the brain and how the brain works and what makes us do some of the things that we actually do. So I applied for Johns Hopkins University, and to God be the glory, I was accepted. And when I got into the program, I began to really develop this love for mental health. And number one, because of my own mental health challenges. I've been an individual that has been depressed at times, very anxious at times, and that led to my relationship with alcohol. I watched family members and friends that had relationships with alcohol and drugs. And as I began to get in the field of mental health, I said, is there a connection in terms of these behaviors with addiction to what the mind is telling them, to the way the mind is working at that time? And so some of my early experiences were working at the Baltimore City Juvenile Center, working with young brothers that probably between the ages of about 16 and 19, that although they were juvenile in age, many of them, they were charged as adult based on their crime. And I began to understand the juvenile brain a lot more, and it just developed this heightened love for mental health. And I began to, work with them and just understand many of the challenges that, these younger brothers were actually experiencing, and trying to help them from the lens of mental health and just help them to see the importance of taking care of your mental health. And I began to see what it does for an individual, that when you can sit down and talk to somebody, an unbiased set of ears and eyes that is willingly going to listen to you and not judge you and make an attempt to help you, how that can really help an individual. And I began to think about how many brothers would have their lives look a little bit differently if they had mental health when they were 16, 17, 18, and 19, right? And understanding the importance of mental health in all communities, but especially communities of color. And then again, my love for mental health continued to grow and grow. And once I graduated, I began to work in jails, prisons, rehabilitation centers, and really understand the importance of mental health. And one of the things as a therapist that even now that I get a kick out of doing is to be able to sit with someone. Right now it's all in a virtual space, to sit with someone and have this individual feel comfortable enough sharing with me the things that they probably wouldn't talk to anybody else about. Understand the importance of what mental health is for an individual to share, and not only to share, but for me to be able to give them tips, tools, strategies, and education to kind of guide them in a different direction. And it also made me think about our own mental health, right? And just understanding how important it is for us to take care of our mental health. And I always explain mental health from this perspective, that mental health is just like any other health. It's like physical health. So we would go to a doctor or a dentist, right, just for a checkup, but we don't often think about mental health in that same lens. So if I can go to a doctor for an annual checkup, and I know that that's important, I'm going to go to a dentist for an annual cleaning or annual checkup, and I understand the importance of that, then I should be able to understand the importance of going to a mental health provider. It doesn't have to be that I'm going through any adverse conditions, that I am in a point of psychosis that I need to go to see a mental health professional. Those things will certainly warrant you going to see a mental health professional. But why can't I go? Because maybe, I just want to check in as it relates to my mental health. Or maybe something isn't right. So many of us, we might have a tweak in our elbow. This pain in my elbow has been there a month. Now let me go to patient first because this just doesn't feel right. How about that as it relates to our mental health? You know what? This thought that I have, it just doesn't seem right. It just doesn't feel right. That's enough for me to go to seek mental health and sit down with a mental health professional, and they can kind of help me unpack a lot of things. And here's the most important thing about mental health, that when we understand some of the challenges that we, and I say we, myself included, that we experience as individuals, a lot of those challenges present day, they can go back to mental health, things that occurred at other points in our life that we never got those things resolved. Many of us as adults, we are those ways as adults because of things that have happened in childhood and earlier life experiences that we never had the opportunity to sit down with somebody, or if in fact we did, maybe we never got those issues resolved. Maybe we never stayed in therapy long enough to get those issues resolved, and now it's impacting us from a greater perspective. I can assure you that most of the things, and I'll just speak from me, right? Most of the things that in my adult life that I encountered as problems, I can go back to earlier life experiences. Now that I am this mental health professional, I really have a good understanding of myself. So man, I could have changed the course of my life with this issue that I'm dealing with now if I had dealt with it with a mental health professional earlier. But why don't we go to mental health professionals? There's this stigma that mental health is frowned upon. In a lot of communities, again, specifically communities of color, there was this notion that mental health is for those that are quote unquote crazy. If you go to see a mental health professional, it must be really something wrong with you. We didn't know that we actually have access to mental health professionals. We didn't know that going to see a mental health professional, it's not an expense. It's going to set your bank account back for years or months. We don't know that. We didn't know that they have pro bono free mental health services. We didn't know that mental health is something that a lot of our employers actually offer, and we might not have to pay a dime, or if we're paying anything, it could be a relatively low copay. So those have been some of the negative stigmas that have kept a lot of people, again, specifically communities of color, because we weren't aware of mental health, that has kept us in the dark. I do like to see the transformation that's actually taking place now, that a lot of people are really excited to go see it. People are actually talking about mental health in this very open, loving manner, and it's not very secretive in nature. I'll tell someone quick, I'm a therapist, but yet I have a therapist. I see people posting it via social media. Man, I can't wait to go see my therapist, or I just saw my therapist. So I do see a transformation is taking place, but I think mental health is really, although a transformation is taking place, I still think that it's underrated in nature in terms of health. Again, we are willing to go to doctors and other things for other parts of our health, but just going to see somebody as it relates to our mental health. Now, here's something that I want the people that actually want to listen to this really, really hone in on. You have mental health, and then you have mental wellness. All of us have mental health. Now, the catch is whether it's good or bad. Mental wellness means that mental health, it's on the upper echelon, meaning it's a lot better. So everybody has mental health. Again, you have physical health, right? You have dental health. So we all have mental health. The question is are we mentally well? So a lot of people say, well, I don't have mental health. Yes, you do. Everybody has mental health. It's just a matter of, is that mental health well, or are you unwell? Does that make sense? So it's really, really important for the listeners of this podcast, Walking in Purpose, to really understand that we all have mental health. Yeah, why not take advantage of mental health and make sure that our mental health is, again, it's an upward direction in terms of being mentally well. Because if we're not mentally well, then what are we? We're mentally unwell. And a mentally unwell person, it affects us in probably every aspect of our lives. To be honest with you, it's certainly going to impact us from a relational standpoint. The mentally unwell version of Rashad, I probably caused havoc and chaos in relationships that I was in. It can affect us from a physical health perspective. If I'm not mentally well, physically, I can begin to see symptoms that are a byproduct of not being mentally well. It can probably impact me from a professional standpoint. If I'm not mentally well, then I can't show up and be the best version of myself for my clients. For the people that are listening to this, I want you to challenge yourself. If you're not mentally well, how would that impact you professionally? Can you do your job at the highest level that you can possibly do it if you're anxious, if you're depressed, if you are experiencing some other kind of diagnosis? So if we're mentally unwell, every area of our life can potentially be impacted. A lot of things that we see happening right here in Baltimore City in terms of violence in the streets, I truly believe that that's a byproduct of a lot of people, particularly a lot of young people, being mentally unwell. And those issues, right? Those issues are now played out in terms of violence. I don't believe that every young man is just an extremely violent person, despite the fact they may engage in a violent act. I believe a lot of that is being mentally unwell, and that is your way to act out on whatever this mental health challenge that it hasn't been diagnosis. But again, I'm still passionate about helping a lot of young men, and just men in general, because I know in terms of gender-wise, you'll see a lot more women make the attempt to reach out to a therapist, do the paperwork, find out how much a copay is, and make that connection and schedule that appointment with the therapist. Men are not necessarily geared towards doing that. A lot of men want to get help, but men often look for the first sign of, okay, this is too much paperwork to do, or the therapist hasn't got back to me, and then that's, in their mind, that's their reason that they will shut down and not go see a therapist. But I do believe that the better that we are individually, men and women, that we're mentally well, society is greatly impacted by that. So I just think it's important to understand that we have mental health regardless, whether it's good or bad. But if we have it either way, why not make sure that we're mentally healthier, because everything that we do in our lives are impacted by it. I'm thinking, I'm a parent, a twin 15-year-old girls who I love and adore. There's been times in my life that I know that I probably wasn't the best version of a father because I wasn't mentally well during those times, right? And so it's an incredible thing to seek therapy, to trust a professional, to take that next step, because you'll find that you are a much better person in terms of the mentally well version of yourself, as opposed to the version of yourself that's mentally unwell. So that is my take on mental health, and I'm just an advocate for mental health. I'm always going to advocate for mental health because I think it's very, very important. And again, I love to see that society is talking about mental health more and more and more. But I do want to challenge anybody that's going to listen to this podcast. It's just to make sure that you ask yourself some questions. I think that the average person, if they have thoughts or feelings that are uncomfortable, I think people know that this doesn't feel right, but I think it's just taking that next step to seek out a mental health professional to help you along the way.
Man, awesome, brother. Wow. You definitely hit on some major points. And one of them that I pulled out was, and I'm going to rephrase it my way, traumas of the past during my younger days are the same thing that followed me into my adulthood. And that reigns true for me. And, I am involved in corrections. So I see young men come through my classes and stuff that 19 years old, and young men, and they've been traumatized, but they don't know how to reach out for help. And like you said, it just balls up. They become desensitized, and that's why we have so much violence in the neighborhood. So that's why, for me, on my end, I am happy to say that we have a group called What's Going On. It's a support group that provides a safe space to uplift souls through social capital and individual well-being. Social capital is the networking and the experience, as well as the resources that we have around the table. And then the individual well-being, we deal with the physical, mental, and spiritual. Those are the three pillars that keep you grounded, basically. Physically, like you just said earlier, you want to make sure you take care of your physicality. You're eating correctly, you're doing your exercise, because if you don't, that affects you mentally, because you'll start having health issues and it'll start messing with your mental. So your mental is how you feel about yourself, whether it's good or bad. You just said that, right? So if you don't get a handle on that, you could go either way. So that mental health issue thing is important, but most importantly, the spiritual part, because God is your foundation. He's the source of who you are. So without him, your mental and your physical can go off killed as well. So that's why, brother, it's so important for people to understand today that mental health issues are so important. You can desensitize it, you can try to suppress it, but if you don't deal with your traumas and get help what's needed, it's going to affect you in your latter days. And I just thank God that he brought me through that situation today to be able to open up this podcast to people that may have or are going through. You either in the beginning of something, in the middle of it, or you're coming out of it. Or either way, we asking you today, if that person is you, I want you to reach out to my brother or even to me to make a connection and deal with your mental health. So, Brother Rashad, tell them how they can reach you, brother.
Yes, I am on all social media platforms under Rashad Bowtie Mills. Rashad Bowtie Mills on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok as well. On any of those platforms, please feel free shoot me a direct message if you're interested in therapy, and I can connect you to the organization that I'm in. If that is not a good fit for you, I can make sure and do my due diligence that I get connected or get you connected with somebody that can assist you in terms of therapy. Again, Rashad Bowtie Mills, Rashad, Bowtie, Bowtie, last name Mills, Mills. And all of my social media accounts are open. You don't have to send me a friend request. You can just send me a message, direct message, and then I can assure you that I can get you connected to someone to assist you with your mental health.
Well, thank you, brother. I think, like I said again, I shout out to Pastor Colbert and First Lady Eva over there at City of Hope Missionary Baptist Church for making the connection between you and I. And brother, I'm definitely going to be calling on you to participate in my support group or our support group to help individuals coming out of detention centers that are dealing with these different traumas and anxieties. So I thank you for being willing to be open to that, brother. I want to say one other scripture that I think is very important. It's in Psalms 34, chapter 34, verse 18. It says, "The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and save those who are crushed in spirit." This verse acknowledges the suffering of those with emotional distress and emphasizes God's compassion for them. So help is right in front of you. If you need that help, please reach out to me or to Brother Rashad. Mental health is very real. I just told you, I've been through 30 years of mental health issues, over 15 years of substance use disorder, and 10 years of incarceration. And it went in that order. I didn't even know. Sometimes you be in mental health and don't realize you're in it until you look back and realize what you've been through because you've been so desensitized to it, right? You've been in it so long that you don't even realize that you need help. And I just thank God that he really rescued me in prison to make me see that I needed that help. And today I'm able to turn around and reach back and help somebody else. There's a quote that says, "We make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give." And that's what me and Brother Rashad are trying to do today. So as always, folks, I'm going to close with God bless you and your household. And we'll see you here next time on Walking in Purpose. God bless you.